EcoStyle is typical of the kind of small business that British Prime Minister David Cameron wants to see started. As Director Simon Hall explains, the company makes renewable energy teaching devices for schools and colleges.
We have 3 products. We've got a wind turbine kit. It's a fully working wind turbine, but it's much smaller. It's used in a classroom. We also have a photovoltaic cell. It shows children how the sun's energy is used to create electricity. And we also have a solar water heater kit, which is essentially a miniature version of a domestic solar water heating system. And it shows just how much power there is hitting the Earth's surface all the time.
The firm, which is based around 40 kilometres north of London, has already sold more than 9,000 devices into British schools. It's now hoping to expand into continental Europe and the USA. Although EcoStyle is faring well, many companies of its size find it difficult to grow without bank financing. But if recent figures from the Bank of England are anything to go by, small firms shouldn't rely on getting any additional credit anytime soon. Lending to small businesses is plunging at its fastest rate since the financial crisis began. Despite promises to hand out the equivalent of over €200 billion to firms this year, net lending to companies of all sizes between January and March was just over €2 billion. So some firms are relying on credit cards and loans from friends. Hannah Holdroyd from the UK Federation of Small Businesses says her members face many problems when dealing with the banks.
One is they're either getting turned down for the credit straight off the bat, and that is obviously very disappointing. There's another problem where they are being offered finance. They are being asked to maybe put up some assets, or they may be asked to reduce their overdrafts in return. Quite often it's too hard for them to do that. They don't want to put up their physical building, just in case something does go wrong. They also get scared that if they go, that they're going to get turned down, and they're scared that the bank's going to think that they're actually a bad credit risk because they have been turned down, so they get scared of going in the first place.
The government's promised extra measures to force banks, especially those bailed out by the taxpayer, to lend more. Officials think firms are being discouraged from applying for loans when making preliminary inquiries at local branches. For the education devices firm EcoStyle, Simon Hall is hopeful when they need it, they'll be able to get help from alternative sources.
We've always found it very difficult to get funding. We've been able to take advantage of a lot of training initiatives, but we've always found it very difficult to tap into any funding. And I think this may be something that's for a lot of small businesses have found. I'm hoping that the introduction of this green bank that we're talking about in the United Kingdom, hopefully that will make it easier for businesses to get hold of the funding that they need. And also perhaps the idea of these local community-owned banks, which would be set up to help small businesses get started. I think that type of initiative would really help get new businesses started in particular.
Lenders themselves say loans are falling because demand has fallen and that companies are being extra cautious. But Hannah Holdroyd from the FSB says her members think the demand is out there.
They're not asking for money to keep them going when otherwise they would die. They're asking for money to help them expand, because they need extra lines of credit, because they've had a particularly large order come in that they can't actually fulfil without some, credit up front. And when the banks don't lend in situations like that, it's very hard to get them to be positive, because the banks are very emblematic of the system as a whole. And if the banks aren't lending to small businesses, it's difficult for small businesses to have confidence in the system.
But that's not stopping EcoStyle in its ambitious growth plans, as Simon Hall explains.
I think we have sort of been conscious of the need to be more proactive and to really sort of shout about what we're doing to try and counter any potential downturn. Really, it's going to be the big organisations that are going to be more hit by it because they find it more difficult to adapt. So I think in a way it's quite an exciting time because it's going to cause businesses to restructure and to be more profitable. And I don't think it's necessarily about making cuts within the business, which I think is one approach. I don't really believe that. I think it's probably more important to focus on trying to get more sales in and to do more marketing activities to counteract it.
But industry leaders warn that without additional funding from the big banks, the ability of small firms to create jobs could be in jeopardy. Nik Martin, Deutsche-Welle,